Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order the Arvada City Council meeting for July 16, 2018. Sorry for our delayed start. The mayor was talking way too much upstairs, and so. But if I can call upon Mayor Pro Tem Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you please join me in a moment of silent reflection? And now the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kristen Resch, if you'll call roll.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Marriott.
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember McGough.
Here.
Councilmember Miller.
Here.
Okay, all present and accounted for. We have the minutes of the July 2nd, 2018 City Council meeting. Do I have any changes or corrections? Seeing none, they will stand approved as presented. Next, we have a presentation of the 2017 CAFR and external audit. Mr. Devon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we have Jody Cates, who's with the accounting firm BKD LLP, who will present the results of the 2017 external audit. I might note that the audit committee met with our finance staff and Ms. Cates earlier this afternoon, and so the information that she'll be presenting will include the information she presented to the audit committee.
Very good.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here and present the comprehensive annual financial report. It's a very big and beautiful document that the finance and accounting staff spent a great deal of time preparing. As Mark mentioned, I'm Jody Cates. I'm with BKD. BKD is the independent public accounting firm that was hired to perform the audit of the comprehensive annual financial report, as well as the single audit which covers the federal funding that is received by the city. As Mark mentioned, I did meet with the audit committee and finance staff earlier this evening and went over the results in great detail, so I'm sure they're happy to answer any questions, or I'm happy to answer any questions at any time that any of the council members may have on the document or any other accounting issues. As far as the results go, we're very happy to report that the city received clean, unmodified opinions across the board for all of the funds and federal programs that we audited. That is an A+. That is the result that the city strives for each year. We did come across a handful of audit adjustments, which is not uncommon in our profession. And we issued one comment to management and one finding that's included in our single audit report. Management is always very open and responsive when we come across these adjustments or when we make recommendations, and they pretty much have solutions implemented before we can even issue our formal report. So you do have an excellent staff working for you, and I commend them for their efforts and their cooperation. BKD is very grateful to be associated with the City of Arvada. We're proud to have you in our client list. Again, you have an excellent team, and we look forward to working with the city on future opportunities. Are there any questions that I can answer about the audit process?
Mr. Marriott?
I don't have a question. I just want to share a comment. Mr. McGough and I served on the audit committee, and it was a real pleasure meeting with the auditors who help us with keeping plenty of scrutiny on the city budget, and also I want to compliment the city financial staff for doing such a good job of our finances, by which these audits come out looking good each time. So thank you to both of you.
Great.
Good. I don't see any other questions or comments. I will echo Mr. Marriott's observations. We've got, I think, an incredible finance staff, and we have great trust in them, and we're required to do an external audit, and we've always been pleased with the results of those audits. So thank you
Great.
for your hard work.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have some people signed up for public comment. At this point, I'll call on Ian and Evan Clark. Good evening.
Hello, my name's Evan Clark. This is my brother Ian Clark. So we're going to talk to you guys about Jefferson County 4-H today. And so I'm 13 years old. I joined 4-H when I was 8, and so I've been in 4-H for, this would be my 5th year. And so with our classes, we have different show classes. And if you win or get second place in one of those classes, you get a certain reward. So one of the rewards is belt buckles. That's the grand champion, which is first place. And the other one is jackets that you can post all your winnings on. So Ian's going to pass those out to you guys. So we have 3 buckles here today for a bunch of different things. And we have 2 jackets. And so the jackets are each customizable, whatever you want to put on there. You can do different font and all that. And so today we're here to ask you guys for donations because we cannot, it's hard for us to raise the funds because each year we put about $5,000 into buckles and jackets for the 93 4-H kids we have. So the buckle donations are $125 and jackets are $65, and we have a form explaining all of that. Which Ian will pass around now. And we also have a youth auction that allows the 4-H members to sell their animals and open them up to the public for them to bid on, which is a really good way to make money and be able to make this profitable. And 4-H is a really great program, teaches kids a lot about financing, like how to save your money and working hard and dedication and all that. So, and if you guys are willing, we have the Jefferson County Fair is from the August 9th to the 12th. And if you guys would stop by, we would love to see you guys there. Me and Ian will both be there all day through the 9th through 12th. So if you guys can find us and say hi, we would love that. So I'm going to turn it over to Ian to finish us off.
All right, real quick before our time ends, as some of you may remember me, I was the kid that participated in the Moore Farm program. I came to you guys, I think late August, to present you guys the plaque and thanking you guys. And kind of just going off of what Evan said, the belt buckles is a huge thing at our fair. Evan and I have been lucky enough to win some belt buckles, but I know some 4-Hers have participated 7 or 8 years have been able to win a belt buckle, and it's a big thing come fair time. We always want to win the belt buckle. That's the big thing around there. So anything helps. As Evan said, if you guys would like to come down to the fair, just hunt us down, and we'd be more than happy to give you guys a little tour of the fair. And thank you guys for your time.
Well, thank you, Ian and Evan. What we'll do is Mr. Devon, is there a way that we can publicize this in terms of either on our webpage or wherever, or I don't know what our policies are in terms of this?
Find a way to.
Great, great.
Absolutely.
And then we'll ask our staff to look at it as well.
Can I ask?
Awesome.
Yes,
Thank you.
go ahead.
So is your ask for belt buckles and jackets? Is that what you're asking for donations for?
Yeah, so the
Is that what this
donations.
form is for?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, just,
So the form we handed out, it gives the donation, like how you can give us the donation and everything. And on the back, there's a form on understanding like what the 4-H'er goes through in auction time and all that. So, and yes, we are asking for the belt buckles and jacket donations.
Well, thanks for coming before us tonight and getting your information out. We
Yeah.
think 4-H is a great program. The work that we've done in conjunction with the Moore Farm has been, I think, a great experience for folks. And that's with the CSU Extension as well there. So it is an excellent program. Thanks for coming out, and we'll get the word out.
Thanks.
You bet.
Thank you.
Next, I'll call on Mindy Moore. Good evening.
Good evening. First, I'm very grateful to see that the city has been working with a developer to build a new affordable housing complex for seniors with the Legacy Senior Residences. Our most recent demographic report shows that over 12,000 Arvada households have a senior age 65 or older, and of those, more than 2,400 senior households live on less than $25,000 a year. This new project, which hopefully can get the financing it needs, can help 72 of those 2,000 plus very low-income senior households in our city. So the Legacy Senior Residences is a great first step, but the fact is that about a third of our Arvada households do not have affordable housing. It's especially needed for those in the service industries, whether it's the people serving you in restaurants, groceries, big box stores, senior assisted living or memory care centers, auto repair shops, or public servants such as our firefighters and teachers. The 1,200 service industry jobs created by the recent Aura project at Ralston Fields, those pay an average annual salary of only $26,000 a year. Those very low-income employees also need affordable housing. Our city's economic vibrancy depends upon a mix of businesses and housing options, both for the clientele as well as the employees. Updating the Land Development Code to allow more housing options is another great step. Thank you. But it's also important that the city work with partners such as the Urban Renewal Authority to promote more development of affordable housing in our city. Aura has tax increment financing incentives. The city has incentives they could use, such as expediting permitting, donating or selling for reduced price city-owned land, or reducing some fees and taxes. However, the city staff need authority from you, the council, to help provide some of those financial incentives for developers building more affordable housing. My understanding is that the Legacy Senior Project has applied to the state for very competitive low-income housing tax credits. But that may not be enough to get this project built. They may also need a financial incentive from the city to complete that project, such as waiving certain fees. So again, we ask that the city use its tools and partner with other entities to continue to bring more affordable housing into Arvada. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public that would like to speak during open public comment portion? Seeing none, I'll close that, and we'll move on to some new business. We have a few items on the consent agenda. The first item is a resolution authorizing a construction contract between the City of Arvada and Barba and Sons Construction for the Ralston Water Treatment Plant operations and security control room remodel in an amount not to exceed approximately $184,000. Second one is a resolution authorizing an agreement between Arvada and Amerisco for the investment grade audit report and energy performance contracting project proposal in an amount not to exceed approximately $75,000. Third item on the consent agenda is a resolution authorizing an amendment to the agreement between Arvada and the Horse Protection League for lease of certain portions of Long Lake Ranch. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda? Mr. Pfeiffer.
Sorry, I pushed the wrong button. I move to approve consent agenda items 2818-343, which is resolution 18-066, through resolution 18-068 for approval.
Motions for approval of those three consent agenda items. All votes are cast. That passes 7-0. Thank you. Next, we have an ordinance on first reading. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that Council Bill 18-033, an ordinance approving a conditional use permit to allow for a light industrial use, coffee roasting, for Two Rivers Coffee, 8250 West 80th Avenue, Suite 15, be approved on first reading and ordered published in full, and a public hearing date set for August 6, 2018 at 6:30 p.m.
Motions for approval on first reading and establishing a public hearing. All votes are cast. That passes 7-0. I've been advised by legal that item 8A needs to be considered after 9G. Do you want a motion to amend the agenda or just?
I don't think we need the motion.
Okay.
We can just move it.
Okay, I'll be moving item 8A to follow and be heard at the same time as we consider 9G. At this time, I am ready to open the public hearing on Council Bill 18028, an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement among the City of Arvada, Town of Bomar, City of Edgewater, City of Golden, City of Lakewood, City of Littleton, Town of Morrison, Town of Superior, City of Westminster, City of Wheat Ridge, and Jefferson County for a Jefferson County Collaborative Transportation Forum Agreement to establish the Jefferson County Collaborative Transportation Forum, a formal committee of the Denver Regional Council of Governments. Dr. Cog. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we considered a similar intergovernmental agreement for Adams County. I'll make a few brief comments and then I'll invite Bob Pfeiffer to say a few words as the City Council's representative to the Dr. Cog board. What is before you tonight, this intergovernmental agreement, will establish a brand new process that will provide the opportunity for Arvada and Jefferson County governments to work as a region in order to look at regional and sub-regional projects at the county level. This has been a deliberative change that Dr. Cog has made in what's called their Transportation Improvement Program, which allocates funding to projects and requires the jurisdiction to establish an IGA that would create this sub-regional forum. And with that, I'll ask Mr. Pfeiffer if he'd like to say a few comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Devon. Just to remind everyone, Denver Regional Council of Governments changed their funding for transportation a little bit different, where now the funding is pushed down to a sub-region for some decision-making on which transportation projects should be done versus at a region. It's not a sub-region, and that's based on county areas. So last time we talked about Adams County. This time it's Jefferson County because we have 2 counties in our city. I don't know if everyone knows that. And I will say to this council, this is a very proficient organization. In fact, we're so good, we're already done with the work before we're even in an agreement. So we had met 3 times. We did it, we identified the 3 projects that we're looking at doing. One is the ward grade separation environmental study. Also expanding Wadsworth and Wheat Ridge from about 43rd to I-70. And I'm trying to think of the third. Oh, the trails, Plains to Mountain Trails continuation through the mountains. Those are the 3 projects we're going to submit regionally, and we've already completed that work earlier this month, and we did it within 3 meetings. Where Adams County, we're still meeting. So I'm very proud to have this done, and I'd like to make the motion if I can.
Well, I have to
After
see if
you
there's
close
any,
it, yes.
I need to see if there's any member of the public that would like to testify on this matter. Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion. Mr. McGough, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to ask Mr. Pfeiffer, so you've indicated that the work is basically finished at this point. The ordinance that we're being asked to approve would authorize an intergovernmental agreement. How do things move forward then with the work of the committee? They move forward by whose signature, whose authorization? How does that work?
So the subcommittee is a formal organization. Once we sign our agreement here, then we just formalize the authority of the group with each representative from each Dr. Cog member. And the chairperson of that organization has been identified. And what happens is when those, when the organization has identified the 3 projects for regional funding, it will be up to the chair to represent those projects at the Dr. Cog board for the subregion.
And there's a separate signature for each of the entities?
No, I think this gives the authority to the entity for the chairperson to sign for the subregion.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you may make your motion, Mr. Pfeiffer.
We're moving quicker than I was expecting. So I move, let me get to the right page. I move that Council Bill 18-028, an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement among the cities of Arvada, Town of Bomar, City of Edgewater, City of Golden, City of Lakewood, City of Littleton, Town of Morrison, Town of Superior, City of Westminster, City of Wheat Ridge, and Jefferson County for a Jefferson County Collaborative Transportation Forum Agreement to establish a Jefferson County Collaborative Transportation Forum, a formal committee of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, DRCOG, be approved on final reading number 4646 and ordered published by title only.
Motions for approval. Mr. Jones, did you wish to speak?
I just wanted to make a comment. I just wanted to thank Bob for the work that you do on DRCOG. That is no small undertaking. And I know that you work with several members of staff on that. And so thank you for your interests, especially for Arvada. But I think this is a great collaboration, and I appreciate your regional work.
Thank you.
Good, all votes are cast. That passes 7-0. Thank you. Next, I'll open the public hearing on 18069, resolution approving or disapproving the proposed service plan for the Ralston Ridge Metropolitan District. Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Before I get into the cover sheet and the reason that we're doing this public hearing, I wanted to just take 30 seconds and acknowledge Mr. Elliott and his team, who's actually brought this application to the City Council tonight. He's got a very fine legal team in Megan Murphy and Kristen Tompkins, and we've had many discussions about this and what the city's position is, including a comment that I think I made to Mr. Elliott when the initial development came in. And so I know Mr. Devon joins me in congratulating them for working with us on this particular matter. The purpose of the agenda item is really to consider a proposed service plan for the Ralston Ridge Metropolitan District. Council will recall that Ralston Ridge development is at on the east corner, the southeast corner of 72nd Avenue and Indiana Street. And Council will recall that you've already given preliminary approval, PDP, and preliminary plat approval to allow for the construction of 49 single-family homes at that particular location. When that public hearing came before the council, I did make a statement on the record that it was at that time, and certainly tonight, that the staff is recommending disapproval of the proposed application for Metropolitan District. And let me get into a few facts about the Metropolitan District for the council. There's a very fine staff report that was authored by Linda Hoover from our Community Development Department that I think really explains what staff's position is. I'm going to ask at the end of my presentation for Matt Knight from the Public Works Department to address one issue relating to drainage, so council has that as Mr. Elliott and his team make their pitch for the Metropolitan District. So in short, the Metropolitan District is for a debt issuance of $3 million. 40 years would be the term of the debt. The mill levy is 40 mills. The proposal that Mr. Elliott and his team have made is to make a cash payment of $76,389. And the reason that request is coming is because in Section 91.2 of the Arvada Municipal Code, there's a legislative piece that talks about when council is making a determination on whether to consider a metropolitan district in a solely residential area, which is what this is. The ordinance reads as follows: to consider districts in those solely residential developments wherein districts must construct regionally significant infrastructure, which include projects of special merit for the community and which addresses one or more of the City Council strategic objectives, as these objectives are amended from time to time, or be located within a half-mile of a designated rail transit station, or be located within a designated redevelopment area, or when all residential units are constructed in accordance with the standards of the Colorado Green Belt Program, or other equivalent program as certified by the Metropolitan Home Builders Association. So what we're really looking at tonight, and I think what Mr. Elliott and his team will be addressing, is those regionally significant infrastructure that he would contribute up to $76,389, which is basically 49 lots times $1,558.96 per lot. The initial setup costs for this Metropolitan District is approximately $200,000 according to the proposed service plan. The annual operations are approximately $100,000. I'll let Mr. Elliott speak to those. Staff is recommending disapproval of this particular service plan, and the reason for that is actually outlined in the staff report. But in short, The Ralston Ridge development is responsible for costs equivalent, according to the staff, to other standard developments throughout the city. And as such, the development's dedication and construction benefits this development is not a regional contribution. Staff does not believe the establishment of the district is in the best interest of the city, nor of those that will live within the Ralston Ridge development, the 49 homes. The addition of another layer of government in a subdivision of only 49 homes places too great a tax burden on the residents that purchase these homes. The proposed contribution by the developer does not outweigh the burden to be shouldered by the eventual homeowners living in this subdivision. City Council has been given two options tonight, and you'll recall in your packets that there's actually two resolutions, and Council will make that decision at the end of the public hearing whether to approve the resolution that actually approves the establishment and the creation of the Metropolitan District, or as the staff is recommending, disapproves. Under the City Code Section 9115, there is a provision within that section, subsection C, that discusses discretionary disapproval, and part of those, and that's actually on staff report, the page 6 of the staff report, if you refer to that. And certainly within those criteria is that the creation of the proposed district is or is not in the best interest of the area or in the best interest of the city. So with that, I'm going to ask Matt Knight to briefly address his analysis as to the drainage improvements and his conclusion relative to the creation of the Metropolitan District to deal with that aspect of the improvements for this development.
Thank you, Chris. Ultimately, as a part of the 72nd Indiana intersection design project, we had a substantial amount of flows that were anticipated coming off of that increased impervious area of that intersection. And during the preliminary design of the development, we ended up determining that a large detention pond would likely be needed in order to mitigate those flows. And ultimately, what we did in working with the applicant was to find an alternative method to handle that. And what we did is we created an alternative drainage design that essentially sent that runoff down the west side of Indiana Street into Ralston Creek. And so the city did spend a little bit of money working with our consultant to address those issues, but ultimately allowed the use, a substantial amount of their property to remain for lots, essentially.
Okay, so with that, thank you, Matt. With that presentation, I would just, I know that Mr. Elliott's going to have a presentation. I would just indicate to the council that certainly Linda Hoover has written an excellent staff report, and she's going to be available to answer certain questions about the proposed infrastructure and the plan, and certainly if there's other questions from a public works standpoint, I'm sure Mr. Knight would address those as well. Thank
Right.
you so much.
Mr. Daly, my assumption, this is not quasi-judicial.
It's not quasi-judicial.
So we do not need to swear
Yeah.
anybody in.
Yeah.
Okay? Mr. Elliott, I'm not going to swear you in tonight. But you and your team can certainly make your presentations, and then we've got a couple of people signed up as well.
Thank you very much. Again, Chris Elliott on behalf of Ralston Ridge LLC, the applicant in this particular case. My address is 7353 South Alton Way, Centennial. And I appreciate everything that the staff said. I have to take exception with Chris's comment about our attorneys, because now they're going to, hourly wages just went up as a direct result of that. But we do appreciate working with staff. You'll all remember, it was a few months ago, we were in front of you with this particular project, and this is one of those, what I characterize as kind of the leftover or orphaned properties that exist in communities that for a variety of reasons is not developed earlier when the adjacent properties develop. And in almost every case, those kinds of properties don't develop because there's problems associated with them. In this particular case, if you've been out there and seen the magnitude of of Matt Knight's work on 72nd and Indiana, it consumed a fairly significant part of this particular property. That didn't mean that we bought less of the property because of the amount of roadway and so forth that was contemplated. It also didn't mean that all those problems that attach themselves to orphan parcels didn't continue to exist. But I want to make it clear, as Chris has said, your staff is awesome. It's probably the best staff that we work with in the metro area, and I never get tired of saying that, and hopefully they never get tired of hearing that. They went above and beyond the call of duty in terms of trying to make things work for us in terms of improvement costs associated with Indiana 72nd and drainage. However, again, due to the nature of this particular site and the requirements that remain in terms of public infrastructure, there is an inordinate amount of public infrastructure that's necessary just to make the site function. Not the least of which is drainage facilities that we agreed with staff to place underground. I don't know if you remember the conversation or not, but we talked about the fact that to really achieve a viable open space play field kind of concept, one option, or the option that we chose to go with staff's input, was to actually put the entire drainage system underground, and our engineers are still scratching their head exactly how we make that work, but that is not an inexpensive alternative to make the site function. Frankly, though, I think it's one of those that, from our perspective at least, and going forward, is a alternative that we're going to look at on a regular basis just for what it does to make the open space usable and make things work within the new community. The proximity to the new 72nd and Indiana is such that the treatment along those two roadways is enhanced. Setbacks and landscaping and fencing and the like is significantly more than you might see in an ordinary community of a similar size. The other thing that I want to talk about is not so much the financing aspect that's associated with metro districts, although it's a pretty important one, and that is the opportunity to really consolidate and save the homeowner money by eliminating the homeowners association. We've been very successful in Leiden Rock, in Richards Farm, in Whisper Creek, in deleting the homeowners association function and allowing the Metro District, which has statutory authority to do so, to actually serve as the HOA. The difference is that anybody that's lived in an HOA usually sees that there'll be a handful of folks that get themselves on that HOA board and they stay there for life. There's no transparency associated with how the HOA functions. There's no opportunity for ordinary homeowners to seek redress when there's determinations that are made by the HOA that ride along the edge of legality. And with a metro district, you have a board that's elected the same as you all are. They serve 4-year terms. The opportunity to run for election within the community is available to anyone who's interested in doing so. You utilize a professional staff that not only assists in making determinations about how you maintain the more intricate public improvements that exist within all of our communities anymore, and you have the same team that provides financials which are audited on an annual basis, which meet all of the statutory requirements associated with that, and make the thing function in a significantly better way than what you would have if you had the HOA. The last component that comes with that is that taxes paid to fund a metro district are tax deductible. They're not with an HOA. Fees associated with an HOA are not tax deductible, and in fact, when you buy or sell a house, the costs associated with an HOA fee is actually factored into your payment. making it just that much harder to qualify for a new home when you have to make or not get credit for that HOA dues. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to those that are smarter than me to talk about the legal aspects of the district, and then we're here to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Alex.
Hello, I'm Megan Murphy from White Bear Ankley, the more affordable member of the legal team. Chris took a lot of my great points, but I wanted to thank staff for helping us get both resolutions before you tonight. We understand staff's recommendation is disapproval, but there's also an opportunity for approval. So I view this as an opportunity to educate you a little bit about districts and this project and answer any questions you might have. So as you know, metro districts are authorized by statute. There's over 1,500 metro districts in the state and 16 in the city of Arvada. Could be 17. We'll see how it goes. The service plan we submitted complies with your model, complies with city code. There is nothing in your code that says a specific size is needed for a metro district. So this is a smaller project, but that's not a requirement in the code. Solely residential districts, as Mr. Daly pointed out, are required to provide regionally significant infrastructure. We're not doing that, but we're offering a fee. This has been used before in other projects like Richards Farm and Leiden Ranch. And the Metro District's really a better vehicle than the Homeowners Association. There's going to be either an HOA or a Metro District to provide the long-term operations and maintenance for this project. The district's better because it has governmental immunity, lower insurance costs, lower collection costs, collecting through taxes through the assessor versus fees through the HOA. And as Chris said, it spreads the cost of improvements over a longer period of time for each resident versus upfront fees for the first people that buy the homes. So I think Chris made a lot of good points off of my outline maybe, but we're here to answer any questions and just to let you know that this is not outside of the norm. A lot of projects are funded with metro districts, as I'm sure you guys know. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else from the applicant? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. I've got a couple people signed up. David Fields.
Good evening, everybody. My name is David Fields. As I just said, I live at 10 Brentwood Street in Lakewood, Colorado. I am a grandson of Lee A. West, who is the trust that owns this property. And I have the pleasure of covering my other 13 beneficiaries, which has been interesting. Is a good way to put that, I guess. A lot of comments, a lot of suggestions, and not much help, but we're getting close. But anyway, I'd like to give you a little background on this property. My great-grandfather bought this property in 1867. My grandfather, Lee West, was born and died in that house that used to be at 7,000 Indiana. Lived there 88 years, never lived another place in his life. Which is kind of an interesting comment. The Shadow Mountain subdivision was part of this property at one time. It was sold by the family many years ago, probably 30 to 40 years ago. This has been a hard sale. We do have 13 beneficiaries, 12 cousins, and my Aunt Betty, sitting right back here, is the last remaining direct descendant of Lee and Ollie West. She has lived on that property all but 2 years of her entire life. Just moved out a couple months ago. They condemned her house to put the road in. I guess you guys probably knew that part, but anyway, it's been extremely difficult and expensive property to develop. As Chris has said before, these guys all know that. You know, there's two disconnected properties, which makes it even worse. So it's like two developments. Been a sizable impact to us and everybody on the 72nd Indiana deal. Matt Knight's done a super job working with us on that. It's been very helpful. He did a great job. You know, a lot of requirements on the road, extra requirements Chris covered. A lot of drainage issues, which you guys have all talked about back and forth. And anyway, we, the beneficiaries of the Lee A. West Trust, support Ralston Ridge in this application, and I'd like to thank you all for considering our application.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public that would like to address City Council at this time? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion. Mr. Elliott, anything you'd like to add in closing before we open it up for council questions?
I'm going to stand up at the microphone and tell you no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you for the, I'm happy to answer questions.
You bet. Okay, I'll open it up for council questions or action. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you. I've got actually a question. Maybe Chris or maybe the attorney. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Megan, is that right?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Ms.
yeah.
Murphy, yes.
Ms. Murphy, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the questions or one of the things that I've heard from residents before is about that when they've purchased a property that is within a metro district, that they get surprised when they compare property tax bills with other people around and say, gee, I'm paying so much more. Why? How is that, and why is that fair? And I mean, I understand how that happens, but my question really is that for the prospective residents of a new development like this that may or may not have a metro district, how much disclosure is required by the Colorado Real Estate Commission or whoever, so that people actually know the full financial structure of what they're entering into?
Sure, great question, council member. So section 9 of the model service plan requires the district provide written notice to all initial purchasers of property. It's recorded on the title commitment that no one reads at closing. It's on the SDA's website, which is a website you can Google and look up all metropolitan districts. It's on DOLA, the Division of Local Government's website. There's no real estate disclosure required through DORA. It's not in the traditional real estate forms, but it will say there's a special taxing district in all caps. You'll see that in the purchase contract. It doesn't say specifically these districts, but it does let you know that you could be in a special taxing district. There's a gap between what's statutorily required and what people actually look at. As you probably hear in public comment, I didn't know I lived in a district. We're doing what we can to get districts' websites, get them on places where people can find when they Google, talk to people in the sales trailer to get them to tell potential customers, buyers, hey, you're in a metro district, it's not an HOA. I think that about sums up what we do for initial purchasers, but they're out there. The district has public meetings that are posted in the boundaries of the district 72 hours and 24 hours in advance. I think as much as people are surprised they live in a district, I'm surprised they don't live in a district, but we're really trying to bridge that gap. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, thank you. That answers that question. The other question I would have is, seems like homeowners associations, after a certain period of time, kind of lose their steam and kind of go away. But that never happens to a metro district, correct? They end up in place essentially in perpetuity.
Well, remember last fall when I was here asking to get rid of Leidenrock 1 through 9? Yeah. Yeah, they don't have to stay in perpetuity. They do stay as long as there's debt outstanding, which is typically a 40-year term. It can be less. As Chris said, it's an elected board, so if residents want to get on, pay off the debt early and dissolve, that can happen.
They can do that. Okay.
I haven't been doing this long enough to answer what happens after 40 years. But
None of the ones you've put in place have asked to be dissolved yet.
oh no, that's not true.
No, I'm kidding. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Living in a metro district, I know exactly what John's talking about. I think it's just people are not sure, but I think relying on the salespeople to share the information about a metro district might be the wrong idea. So I'm hoping that's not what you're hoping to do, because salespeople, you gotta love them, but sometimes they don't give you all the right information. You want to sell the house, but looking at the length, the term length, what happens? Are the mills directly correlated to the term? So 40 mills for 40 years? No, it just happens to be that there's some coordination there on, and I don't know, I'm just looking at you, Chris, sorry.
There's no specific correlation. You could run much fewer mills if you wanted to.
Just, so if it was, let's just say if it was 20 mills, half, does it double the length of time to pay off?
Not necessarily. It depends on, so much depends on how fast the the community sells and what the values of the homes are within the community, and what's happening in the bond market, frankly. So it could be that simple. It could be that it's not that simple, and it could be that from a developer's perspective, we take risks every day, and this is one of the risks that we take, is that there will be a market for bond sales at some point in the future. I've lived long enough to see that there are not sometimes that, and consequently, we're not able to recoup the costs that we had anticipated we'd be able to recoup. So you take your chances associated with that, but with all of the improvements, over a period of time, it used to be back in the dark ages, the local municipality built a significant amount of the infrastructure. And as things have passed, that responsibility has fallen to the development community more and more. It's just a fact. It's not a criticism in any way. But in allowing affordability to continue to be present, the legislature allowed municipal jurisdictions to impose or allow metro districts to take place. And in fact, the cities have the right to put in place their own special districts for certain improvements. It's a very economical way of constructing things. I-25, the T-Rex project was built with bonds that were paid off over time. I'm old enough to remember the Boulder Turnpike was built with bonds when it was originally constructed, and that actually paid off early. So it's a very efficient way of raising funds for public improvements, and works out well for the community. But back to your original point, the Metro District serves at the pleasure of those that it serves. So those that are within the boundaries of the district get to be elected to that board, and they get to make decisions as to whether or not they want to spend or not spend on certain things. We look to recoup certain development costs so that we can sell the lots and consequently the homes at a more affordable rate. But beyond that, the homeowners themselves get to decide what they spend money on or don't spend money on. And to the issue of disclosure, we make sure that everyone who buys a home signs a disclosure acknowledging that they're within a metropolitan district. Now again, it's part of the stack that you get when you close, but that's something that we think is very important that they know. And in the sales contract, as Megan mentioned, there is a statement in there in all caps and all bold that says, you're probably in a metropolitan district and you need to pay attention to what that does for you. I think the other thing is that you look at all the new communities, be it Candelas or those communities that we did in Line Rock and Whisper Creek and others, they all have districts. And so when someone says they're looking for a new home or they're looking for a recently built home, odds are they're in a metropolitan district in those areas that they're looking. Those that have a need of ongoing maintenance and so forth are going to find that the HOA dues in the non-district communities is high. It's nothing for HOA dues in a normal community to be a couple $100s a month. And in Line Rock, it's maybe a couple $100s a year associated with that. So there's all of those advantages that come into play.
Any idea what the Metro District fees will be per household based on these 49 houses?
I don't know that at this moment. We need to get further into it and see. It's going to have to be affordable in order to make it work. The other thing that you mentioned that I forgot was there's a cap on the maximum mill levy, so that if we run into a housing crisis, that cap holds in place the maximum mill levy that can ever be assessed, so that if there's a problem and the bonds aren't being repaid at the pace at which the bond buyers thought they would, tough. They got to wait until the district has the financial ability to make that up.
One last question. What's Plan B?
What's Plan B? Plan B is that we'll put the improvements in place. It'll cost the builder more to buy the lots than it would otherwise because we don't have this opportunity. And there will be an HOA, and the HOA will be responsible for the ownership and maintenance of all of those improvements that are within the.
So it's going to get passed. It's going to get passed down to the
Yeah, I'm not
homeowner one way or the other.
Correct. But I like to think sometimes we're on that side of the table too.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Hey, Chris, I still have questions for you. I'm not, so this is a very small metro district, and I just need some help understanding, because I'm looking at your numbers and hearing what you're saying, I'm just not lining it up. So you have a summary that shows $4.4 million in improvements. So that comes out to about $88,000 per house. So, okay, so you want a metro district to repay some infrastructure costs, but you also mentioned operating and maintenance, right? So can you go a little bit into the operating and maintenance on what this district will be doing? Because not only are you paying your debt, there's going to be an additional tax, I'm assuming. So it'd be, like you mentioned, $1,500 per house. I think that's for the debt. Somewhere in here I read that. So how does it pay for the operating maintenance?
First of all, the $1,500 has become an amount that's been substantiated by precedent within the city of Arvada for contribution from a new community that's not specifically tagged with regional improvements.
Okay.
And in Leiden Ranch, Leiden Rock, we built significant regional improvements. Leiden Ranch, they didn't, so they paid a fee. Richards Farm, we did, and we didn't build significant regional improvements, but we paid a fee. And that fee gets used by the city for regional improvements. I think the Richards Farm improvements, a couple $100,000. And we understood that those costs were going to go towards the 72nd Indiana improvements. Here you've got $80,000 worth of those fees that would go to the city, and the city in its discretion could determine what it spent those fees on. So that's that piece. The bonds, there's a maximum amount that's permitted in Arvada, and Chris, tell me what the maximum mill levy is. It's 40. It's 40 mills. You can never exceed that 40 mills. And then O&M, operations and maintenance, would be above that, and that's set on an annual basis based upon what the community wants. So if it's maintaining landscaping and some other facilities, maybe it has a social committee, and maybe it has some other things that you often see with an HOA. That goes into a public process to determine the budget for the O&M costs, and then the mill levy gets set before the end of the year for the following year.
Okay, so there's a fixed debt repayment, and then there's an O&M that can go up and down depending on the board and the discretion of its citizens.
Correct.
Okay.
And that 40 mills is a max.
Right. And then, okay, so no HOA, so that's how it's covered, is through this. So this is a
Right.
quasi-government kind of thing going on where the HOAs aren't needed. Now, second owners, if they're the second owner of the house, that's where I think you have problems disclosing this, right?
They get the same standard form real estate contract.
Just with the
that
big words.
Everybody does, with the big words, bold, and
Okay, and then what
Caps.
about the west property in the middle? I mean,
It'd
are
be
we
a-
obligating that for the future?
it's entirely up to if and when that property develops. It would be, part of our land use plan contemplates logical connections to make
Right.
that property work. But if it never develops, or it stays unincorporated and is used for a commercial use or whatever, it's never involved in this district at all. It would be up to them, just like a property that's in an unincorporated Jefferson County, to choose to annex. This district has no right to force them to
Okay.
join.
That's all the questions I have.
Mr. McGough?
Yes, thank you. I do have a couple of questions for you, Mr. Elliott. Obviously, I'm looking most closely at the staff report, and in particular how it's summarized in our cover pages. And I'd like you to respond to The first two items there, it talks about the construction of extraordinary regional detention facilities, and the staff report indicates that no, there are not extraordinary regional detention requirements needed. Secondly, it talks about the dedication of right-of-way along Indiana, and the report indicates that the Ralston Ridge development is responsible for costs equivalent to other standard developments throughout the city. In the staff report, in addressing those two issues, the staff is advising us that neither of those is sufficient, has justification for granting the Metropolitan District status. Could you direct some attention to those 2 points and why you think that we as a council should not accept those findings of the staff report?
Sure. With regard to the drainage, there's a handful of drainage improvements that are required for the site. And in the staff report, it talks about regional improvements emanating from off-site that would have otherwise crossed this property. And with staffs working with us, we were able to avoid actually bringing regional type drainage improvements across the site. But there's still considerable drainage improvements on the site that are unique to the site because of the way it's configured. They're not specifically.
Isn't it the key? I'm sorry. The staff report is indicating that the flow will go directly south down to the Ralston Creek rather than be impacting your property. Is the staff report not correct in that?
No, the staff report is correct that there are off-site regional type improvements necessary to redirect flows coming from off-site. And I agree with that. What I'm saying is that there are drainage improvements that are necessary on-site because of unique conditions that exist on-site. The subdivision to the east, for example, the Shadow Mountain subdivision, did not provide adequate downstream improvements in the storm sewer system. And consequently, if it had, then the need for the inordinate drainage facilities that we're obligated to build on site to throttle down the drainage water departing the site wouldn't have been necessary. It's unfortunate, but the requirements at that point in time when that subdivision was done didn't take into account the fact that this property would develop at some time in the future and that there would be drainage coming from this site, crossing it, and right now it just crosses through 3 different folks' backyards, and in a major storm it creates quite a mess. That's different from the regional improvements necessary to contain the drainage that is coming from the west side of Indiana. So hopefully that distinction helps just a little bit in terms of what is here.
Well, at this point, I'll just say I don't find that persuasive. The staff report talks about no significant regional impact, and as you've addressed my question, you've only talked about the on-site impact. So it seems like we're talking 2 different things. How about the right-of-way itself and what's being required, the dedication of right-of-way along Indiana? As the staff report indicates, the Ralston Ridge development is responsible for costs only equivalent to other standard developments throughout the city. Is that not correct?
Again, it's a little bit more complicated. The improvements that the city is responsible for building within Indiana and 72nd, it does take up the regional nature associated with that. But we're still obligated to purchase the right-of-way. And if you've been out there, because you can't build the road on either side of a center line and it's all shoved to the east side, there's a significant amount of right-of-way that's coming off of our side of the expanded roadway. And we're paying for that. In fact, the costs associated with the acquisition of that right-of-way by the city from the West Trust we're responsible to repay the city for the costs associated with that right-of-way. It's a big number. It's a big cost that in a normal circumstance, you would not be providing that much additional right-of-way in order to make it work. That's an added cost. The other thing that I would mention is that the city's regulation says you're either going to build regional improvements or you're going to pay a fee in lieu of building those regional improvements. We are paying a fee in lieu of the regional improvements. That's that $1,500 that's based on other projects, other communities within Arvada that didn't build regional improvements. So, and then to try to clear up again on the drainage, had there been adequate facilities downstream, we could have come into people's yards downstream from this project into existing Shadow Mountain and rebuilt the storm sewer system that existed there to better handle the storm that comes just from this property. Or we can detain a significantly larger amount of water on site, still build some downstream facilities, but they're not technically regional in nature. They're on site, but we're avoiding the regional improvements that we otherwise would have, and we would have disturbed those folks that live downstream. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jones.
This is a question for staff. With regards to Richards Farms, Leiden Ranch, Leiden Ranch and Spring Mesa, what regional improvements did those 3 developments produce?
There was no regional improvement, Mr. Jones. Those were negotiated prices based on improvements to Leiden Road. And when those properties were annexed, we said you can either pay the cost of the improvements, but knowing that there was disjointed pieces of development going in there, we couldn't do it all at one time, so they paid into a fund that we are now using to build the improvements on Leiden Road.
Okay, so is there any reason why that's any different, why this project is any different than that?
No. Okay. No, they paid into the fund to mitigate the improvements impacts they created.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other questions. I'm ready for a motion. Mr. Jones?
Thank you. I would love to make a motion. I need to get to it, though. I move that R18-069, a resolution approving the proposed service plan for the Ralston Ridge Metropolitan District, be approved. And I'll just speak to that motion if I could just for a second. It seems to me like it's, as we heard from Mr. Fields, that property has been in the city of Arvada for probably as long as the city of Arvada has been around, and it's a family property, and one that wasn't part of the subdivision just to the east of that. And so it does have its inherent challenges and development challenges. I think that the right-of-way that the city of Arvada has obtained for the improvement of West 72nd Avenue in Indiana will be a benefit to the citizens of Arvada. It will be a benefit regionally to citizens, even though it may be indirectly associated with things that are going on with this development. And so I think that while it is a small development of only 49 homes, those costs for the improvements that need to be made for that site to be developed are going to be passed along one way or another. It seems to me that this might be one of those, this might be a solution that long-term can help get this done quicker. It allows the developer to recoup some of their costs, and it doesn't overburden the homeowner. However, there is the challenge of education and helping people understand the difference between a metro district and an HOA. Metro districts are relatively new. But I would agree that most of the new developments in Arvada now fall under a Metro District guidance. And so for that reason, I will be supporting the motion that I made.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer.
As I appreciate the creativity and the vision that you have, I still struggle with the education piece and the lack of state guidance with proper documentation for disclosure on this, because even though they've been around for some time and there's however many there are out there, we still get the phone calls of, why is my tax bill higher than others? Living in an HOA, I agree with your comments that a Metro District makes more sense, but I don't know if society is there yet, because if they were, I don't know if I'd get the phone calls that we get complaining about, why do I pay more tax money? And then for us to get into a debate with somebody who a chunk of their tax money actually goes to a Metro District, and them not understanding it. And I fear that that will continue through. I don't see that the regional significance, because it's very little money being contributed to this intersection at all, to make it considered that it's contributing to the intersection, because the intersection was designed before this even came to us. So also the cost of that intersection has, I think, jumped to about 20% since last time we saw numbers. I think it was around 6 some million. Now it's at 8 plus something million. That's what I saw somewhere. That could have been from the drainage maybe being changed.
Current contract is at 6.7 million.
6.7. So slightly higher than what I recall, but it still went up. So because of that reason, and because of some, I think, concerns of creating another form of government with a very small group of folks, and the education process, and with the staff support, I can't support the motion.
Okay, Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. So this is a pretty hard one, I think. Because this is small, the numbers we're talking about are pretty small unless you're a homeowner there, and then the property tax impact is not small. But there was two things that kind of are leading me towards the decision I'm going to make, and they are two things really. One is, while the contribution to regionally significant infrastructure seems relatively small, it's also a relatively small number of homes, and I think that contribution is important in our scheme of things. The other is the tax deductibility of this form of financing part of a house. I think that's a positive for everybody. Maybe with the tax scheme that we have now, with that deduction being limited, maybe it becomes limited, although I don't see it as that so far. I think the challenge, though, is disclosure and for people to know ahead of time what they're getting into. But I can't see that trumping the advantages that this particular Metro District gives. Now, if I were to see a development that's even smaller than this with a proposed Metro District, I have to look at that time. I don't know that my feelings would be the same. But for this one, even at this relatively small size, I see an advantage to it, not for the developer, but for the citizens of Arvada and the citizens who will live here eventually, whether they're the initial purchasers or the later purchasers. And my hope would be that they will be adequately noticed regardless of where they are, that the system can adequately notice them regardless of where they are. So for that reason, I will be supporting the motion and voting yes.
Mr. McGough.
Thank you. Yes, I will not be supporting the motion, but I'd like to speak to the reasons. First of all, just doing a quick calculation, if houses there should sell in the neighborhood of $500,000 and they're assessed at 7% times 40 mills, that means that somebody is going to be paying $1,400 a year. Times 40 years is $56,000 is the tax burden for an individual house, if that is the selling price of a house. It could go higher or a little bit lower, I suppose. But that's an extraordinary burden to a small neighborhood. Secondly, I don't think Mr. Elliott responded or at least he did not respond to my satisfaction concerning the regional impact of the detention or the dedication of right-of-way. I think given the tremendous tax burden on 49 homes, which would be close to $3 million over a period of the 40 years, it just seems like it's putting an extraordinary burden on the homes in this area. So I have to conclude, as the staff report has concluded, that the establishment is not in the best interest of the city, nor of those who will live within this development. The addition of another layer of government in a subdivision of only 49 homes places the great tax burden that I mentioned on the residents who will eventually purchase these homes. The proposed contribution by the developer of $76,000 does not outweigh the burden to be shouldered by the eventual homeowners living in the subdivision. So I will be voting no on the motion.
Mr. Jones, are you going to convince us even further of your position?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I just want to make a point, maybe a counterpoint to Mr. McGough. In the $1,400 a year in taxes, that's, if you put it into perspective of HOA fees, the HOA could charge whatever they wanted to charge. If they charged $117 a month, it's the same thing. And that's what I see happening in a case like this, where the homeowner's going to pay for it anyway, whether you call it an HOA fee or you call it a metro district. They're going to pay for it. And so this allows for a more creative way for it to be financed, and it also allows for a tax savings with the tax deductibility of a metro district. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, the motion is for approval. I am going to make a comment, sorry. I do need to weigh in, and this is a difficult one. Because, you know, my HOA, I pay more than this amount, but I'm having a real problem with creating another level of government for 40-some homes, and for that reason, I will not be supporting the motion. Ms. Miller, you're the last one to vote. Okay, that fails on a 5-2 vote. I will need a motion, I assume I need a motion from someone on the prevailing side of that motion to deny the creation.
If I can pull it up.
Mr. Pfeiffer, you're more than welcome to.
So I just need to do the motion as
for
disapproving.
Right.
I move that resolution 18-069, a resolution disapproving the proposed service plan for the Ralston Ridge Metropolitan District, be approved.
Mr. McGough, did you have any additional comments?
No, I'm sorry.
It's fine. So this motion is to disapprove. We'll see if Ms. Miller changes her vote. That passes 5-2 with Mr. Marriott and Mr. Jones voting no, all other council members voting yes. Thank you for your presentation. I do want to thank staff for your work on this. You know, I think the analysis and frankly the conclusions are consistent with what our policy's been in the past. I think that Mr. Elliott and his team knew what staff's stance was coming into this, did a nice job making their presentation, but that's our decision. Thank you. Okay, next I'll open the public hearing on The next three items are 18070, a resolution setting forth certain findings of fact and conclusions as to the annexation of certain land into the city of Arvada, Colorado, White Annexation Number 2, 7519 Sim Street. Same time, we'll consider Council Bill 18029, an ordinance annexing certain land into the city of Arvada, White Annexation Number 2, 7519 Sim Street, and Council Bill 18030, an ordinance rezoning certain land within the city of Arvada, White, from Jefferson County A2 Agriculture to RL Residential Low Density, and amending the official zoning maps of the city of Arvada, Colorado, 7519 Sim Street. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, will have Planning Manager Rob Smetana introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. The applicant, Stephen White, is requesting annexation into the city of a 1 acre parcel and approval of a rezoning from Jefferson County A2 to City of Arvada RL. The property is located between Sims Street and Sims Court, just north of 75th Avenue, and is completely surrounded by the city. The applicant is not proposing to subdivide the property at this time, but has submitted a concept plan for a potential future residential subdivision that is part of the council packet. The applicant is not requesting any modifications of development standards. Staff is recommending approval of the annexation and rezoning based upon the approval criteria found in the Land Development Code. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of both the annexation and the rezoning at their May 22nd, 2018 meeting. We have received the signed posting log and affidavit, and they are in order. The applicant is in attendance for a presentation and questions, and we also have members of city staff here for any questions as well. Thank you.
Very good. The posting log and the affidavit of mailing will be made part of the record. Anyone who wishes to testify on this matter, if you'll raise your right hand. Swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do. Very good. You as well, sir. Very good. The applicant may proceed with your presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Ken Toland. I'm with KT Engineering. Our address is 12500 West 58th Avenue. I'm here to present the West Annexation Number 2. So it'll be kind of hard following Chris, but I'll see what I can do. We can go to the next slide here. This is an overall aerial showing the location of the site. The site is generally located north of 75th Avenue and west of Sim Street. This is a closer aerial view of it. The site is almost exactly, well, it is exactly an acre in size and is currently zoned Ag 2 in Jefferson County. We're proposing to annex and rezone to residential or light density residential or low density residential. As part of this, we'll also be dedicating right away for both Sims Street and Sims Court. This shows the surrounding zoning. To the north and to the west is PUDR. It's the relative density is 3.6 acres dwelling per acre, which aligns with the zoning we're asking. The low density residential to the south and the east is also low density residential, which would match with our proposal as well. This picture here shows the comp plan. The land use plan shows this as suburban residential, which also recommends 5 dwelling units per acre, which also would align with our proposal. With that ends our presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Very good. We've got one member of the public that indicated they wish to speak. If you'd like to come down. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Brian Grant. I'm at 7517 Sims Court. I just have a general comment on the May meeting. They showed a preliminary idea of what the zone or the lots would look like. And my concern, living in a cul-de-sac and lack of parking there, is the 4 driveways that were pointing into Sims Court. Hoping to potentially maybe have one point to the 75th Street and or Sims Street to lessen the amount of driveways that point into Sims Court and help with the parking situation once new houses are there.
Great. Now, Mr. Daly, that's really more of an issue for once we have a actual plan before us as to this.
That's correct.
So what I would suggest, sir, is when we actually, if and when they submit a, what would they be doing, a preliminary development plan?
I think so.
Yeah. When they do come back forward with that, and because of your proximity, you'll get notice of that, that it would be appropriate at that time, because that may be sometime down the road, and we may have forgotten about that issue. So it would be important for you to come back and testify at that time as to that specific concern.
Wrong, since I thought that's what we're doing today. So.
No, we're not there yet. We're
Gotcha,
just-
okay.
Very good, but thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming forward.
Mayor,
Yes.
can I make one point of clarification?
Uh-huh.
They are proposing to rezone to RL, which means any subdivision would likely be 4 lots, and so that would be an administrative process.
Okay, so it won't come back before us, but at that time, it would be important for you to provide that information to staff. Okay, and I'll ask staff to go ahead and make a note of that, since, so when you're looking at that you can see if there's another more viable way to deal with those driveways. Very good. Anything else from the applicant? Very good. Open it up for city council questions or close the public hearing. Open it up for city council questions or action. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yeah, I just have a question for staff. So typically these come in when they have a plan too. They don't usually just annex in and not have a plan. I mean, why are we doing this one a little bit different? Because now
That's
we go
correct.
into administrative approval.
Yes, that's correct, that quite often they do come in with a plan. I think at this time, Mr. White is just anxious to get it into the city, and I think, Stephen, you may be able to answer this a little bit better, but it may be an issue of financing at this time, but right now, they just wanted to get it entitled and within the city.
How does that affect the water requests and sewer hookups and so forth? I mean, because there's no plan. Usually they come into the city with a plan, and they usually come in, with an idea of they want water, they want police protection or something. And right now we're coming in asking an annexation for what?
It is to eventually subdivide, and just at this time, they just do not have a final subdivision plan. The utilities plan, public improvement plan, all of that will get submitted with the minor subdivision, and that will be a requirement that we are asking of them in the development agreement. But in order to get services, in order to subdivide to the density that they would like, they have to be annexed in. And just a matter of processing and timing, I think that was up to the applicant and his decision to do so.
Yeah, I just feel that that's a concern to just do that blindly when we normally do it the other way. I didn't know if there's a process change, or just because the applicant wants it, we decide to do it differently.
The property is within our growth boundary. It's surrounded by all sides by the city. And the only requirement of the applicant for rezoning and annexing is to provide a conceptual plan, given that he's going to a straight zoning district of RL.
And it's only 4 units for this area. That's the max they can ever put on this?
It's a maximum of 5 dwelling units per acre. The concept plan is showing 5 units, and that includes the parcel to the south that is already annexed into the city.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Marriott.
I think you may have just answered my question. I was going to ask the applicant. I see that this annexation is for the acre that is not adjacent to 75th Avenue, but yet your concept plan shows possible subdivision that includes the property that is adjacent to 75th Avenue. And my question was going to be, is that property already been annexed? Is that the difference
That
here?
is correct, and Mr. White also owns the property to the south.
Got it, okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Mr. Daly, to be clear, there is no requirement that we have to consider them both at the same time, right?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Mr. Jones?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Now, there are no further lights on. You may proceed.
I move that Council Bill 18-029, an ordinance annexing certain land into the city of Arvada, White Annexation Number 2, 7519 Sim Street, be approved on final reading numbered 4647.
Nope, you got to start with the findings of fact one, item C.
Findings.
8C. Resolution 18070. I'm sorry, 9C. Sorry, 9C.
Sorry.
you want to hold yours, Mr. Jones, and I'll make that first one, and you can make the second one?
Please.
Okay. Thank you. I move that Resolution R 18-070, a resolution setting forth certain findings of fact and conclusions as to the annexation of certain land into the City of Arvada, Colorado, White Annexation Number 2, 7519 Sims Street, be approved.
Motions for findings of facts. That passes 7-0.
Thank you for
Jones?
bailing me out, Mr. Marriott. I move that Council Bill 18-029, an ordinance annexing certain land into the City of Arvada, White Annexation Number 2, 7519 Sim Street, be approved on final reading numbered 4647 and ordered published by title only. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Motions to approve the annexation. That passes 7-0. One more.
Sometimes the paper version is faster.
That's why I'm an old-fashioned guy. Love my paper.
Okay. Here we go. I'm there. Well, I thought it was there. Okay. I move that Council Bill 18-030, an ordinance rezoning certain land within the City of Arvada, White, from Jefferson County A2 agricultural to RL residential low density, and amending the official zoning maps of the City of Arvada, Colorado, 7519 Sim Street, be approved on final reading numbered 4648 and ordered published by title only. And this motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Motions for the rezoning. All votes are cast. That passes 7-0. Welcome, Mr. White, to the city with the remainder of his property. And I would suggest that you stay in contact with that property owner in terms of having some conversations about those driveways. Very good. Okay, you bet. Yeah, we're going to take a standing in place break here, or if somebody needs.
Running to the restroom break.
Okay, I'll reconvene the Arvada City Council meeting here for July 16th. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing on Council Bill 18031, an ordinance rezoning certain land within the City of Arvada, Legacy Senior Residences, from City of Arvada RL, Residential Low Density, and B2, General Business, to PUD BPR, Planned Unit Development, Business, Professional, Residential, and amending the official zoning maps of the City of Arvada, Colorado, generally located southwest of West 64th Avenue and Sheridan Boulevard, and comprised of 5430 West 64th Avenue and a vacant parcel. At the same time, we will be considering the ratification and approval of Council Bill 2018-0001, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado, to amend the 2014 Arvada Comprehensive Plan land use designation pertaining to legacy senior residences from suburban residential to neighborhood commercial, generally located southwest of West 64th Avenue and Sheridan Boulevard, and comprised of 5440 and 5430 West 64th Avenue. Mr. Devon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
And then Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, and also, we got to consider Legacy Senior Residences Preliminary Development Plan, generally located southwest of West 64th Avenue and Sheridan Boulevard, comprised of 5440 and 5430 West 64th Avenue, and a vacant parcel.
Okay, thanks to the city attorney for catching that one. I'll ask Planning Manager Rob Smetana to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Cornerstone Associates is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, and preliminary development plan approval for a 72-unit senior residential project. As mentioned, the project is located southwest of the intersection of Sheridan Boulevard and 64th Avenue. The comprehensive plan amendment would change the designation of the western portion of the site from suburban residential to neighborhood community commercial to match the existing designation on the eastern portion of the site. The property is currently zoned B2 and RL. The proposed zoning of PUD BPR will allow for the development of the proposed residential project and would be consistent with the proposed comprehensive plan designation. The proposed preliminary development plan covers approximately 4.14 acres and would include the development of a 3-story building, detached garages and surface parking spaces for residents and guests, and associated landscape areas. 3 modifications of development standards have been requested as outlined in the staff report, and staff does support all of those modification requests. Staff is recommending ratification of the comprehensive plan amendment and approval of the rezoning and the preliminary development plan based upon the criteria found in the Land Development Code. The Planning Commission unanimously approved the comprehensive plan amendment and recommended approval of both the rezoning and preliminary development plan at their June 19th, 2018 meeting. We have received the signed posting log and the affidavit, and they are in order. The applicant is in attendance for presentation and questions, and we also have staff members for questions as well. Thank you.
Very good. The posting log and the mailing affidavit will be made part of the record. Anybody that wishes to testify on this matter, if you'll raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Very good. I will hear from the applicant. Good evening.
Council members. Bobby Joe Lucas with Cornerstone Associates out of Omaha, Nebraska. Address 209 South 19th Street, Suite 100, Omaha 68102. I am before you to present just a brief slideshow of the information, the project that we're proposing. Which button is it? Development team, myself as well as Steve Cerisa with Gene Engineering is here to answer any questions. The project we're proposing is a 72-unit senior attainable housing project. What we are proposing are 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom rents that range anywhere from $400 to $950 for a 1-bedroom, $550 to $1,050 for a 2-bedroom, and all rents are included with utilities. Who are we trying to target? Seniors age 62 or better. Most are retired. Through our portfolio, we have an average age of 68 to 72 are our residents, and generally they are limited to income, pension, retirement plans, Social Security, just limited income in general. The average median income that we are targeting are residents at 30 to 60% of that area median income. Your area median income here is $89,900. I am trying to target one-person households from $18,900 up to $37,800, and two-person households from $21,600 to $43,200. Since senior housing has been the largest catalyst of what I've been doing for the last 17 years, what we've learned a lot about seniors and location is seniors are everywhere within the nation. Most communities do not provide for long-range planning for either seniors that are already, or residents that are already aging in place, or those that want to in-migrate to become closer to their family members that live within a community. So the in-migration has been going on for years, and what we've taken a look at then is, for location-wise, the amenities. What's important for us and for seniors is something that could be considered walkable amenities within a half mile. The site that we are proposing is at the southwest corner of 64th and Sheridan Boulevard. It is not on the hard corner. It's an infill site. It's surrounded on the north and the east and the south side with commercial, single-family homes on the left side, or I'm sorry, on the west. I apologize. What we love about this site, as I mentioned, is location. The public transportation, the public bus stop, is within 0.13 miles. The Gold Strike station is just hitting at 0.5 miles parking lot right on the corner. However, the Walgreens is adjacent. The residents can literally walk to the Walgreens. They can walk across the street from Sheridan to the King Soopers. There's banking, there's retail, there's restaurants, and all other amenities right within the area of this location. Above you, you will see the preliminary development plan that was submitted to the city planning staff. The project will have an overall density of approximately 16 units per acre, and the project will exceed the minimum parking requirements. There will be 24 garages and 67 on-site parking spaces. What that means is that there will be no cars from any of our residents or our visitors that will hit any of the public streets that surround the property. The zoning, as mentioned, it is currently divided into two parts. The eastern parcel is zoned B2, and the permitted use is already high-density residential. The western parcel, which is a little over 1.5 acres, is currently zoned RL, which is residential low density. It's designated as the suburban residential, and its permitted use is up to 5 units per acre. So what we are proposing is the zoning change, rezoning this to a planned unit development, business, professional, and residential. The on-site improvements will be the private drive, North Sea, providing access and easement for the fire department. Utility lines will be relocated or buried where necessary. All stormwater drainage designated, or I'm sorry, is designed with a large detention pond to capture our on-site stormwater drainage. And in addition to that, there is an auto parts store that's directly to the north that at the present time their stormwater is not being captured. So we will make necessary improvements in order to assist the city and them in becoming compliant in capturing their stormwater as well. We will be providing significant landscape buffers between all of the commercial to the north, east, and south, in addition to the single-family homes that are on the west side of the property. What we've done to buffer that is we have placed the single-story garages on the west side of the property to create a nice buffer between us and them. Our residents in the development will not be able to see into their backyards because the building is far enough away that there will not be an invasion of privacy. We have situated the garages significantly away from the western portion of our lot line. Therefore, there's quite a bit of a gap or a buffer there for them. The off-site improvements. In addition to everything that we're doing to improve the site so that we can construct on it, we are also providing extensive off-site improvement, most of which is a condition of approval. The east-west connectivity along West 63rd Avenue. Off of Sheridan, 63rd does not exceed my property line west. We will be continuing that to the distance of our property line. the north-south connectivity in Long Benton. The project will provide access through our property. It will not be public, designated as a public road, but it will be public access through the property. A private drive on the west of the property. Legacy will improve the private drive. It should say to the east of the property. I apologize. There's already a private drive on the east side. You'll see that that separates between the Walgreens. I think there's a bank there, retail, and then it goes south to where the car wash is. That seems to be the line where all of the cars that go to the car wash back up. And so that has caused some significant damage on that road. And so what we're doing is we are improving that road as well, and we are also improving the drainage that goes down there so that our on-site will capture the stormwater drainage on that. And as mentioned, we will work with the auto parts store to make whatever improvements are necessary so that their drainage gets captured as well. What we believe for this particular project are strengths with this location. The transportation, again, I want to point out, is 0.13 miles to a bus stop. The amenities, everything that's around that that's available to our seniors. And for those of you that are familiar with what a walk score is, walk scores are rated for every community in a site. Arvada, the city of Arvada itself has a walk score of a 39. When I submit the information for our location alone has a walk score of a 63. That is a superior site when you're looking for housing for seniors. I want to point out that I understand that City Council has put in a strategic result for providing a minimum of 50 units of senior attainable housing. This is something that we believe we will be able to meet and exceed with our offer of the 72 units. We're proposing the joint venture with the Arvada Housing Authority, which promotes the nonprofit and for-profit developments. There is a strong senior renter population that supports the 72 units, and I do believe that within a 3 to 4 month period, that property will already be full. And the existing affordable projects, whether they're family or senior, will not be adversely affected by the addition of the 72 units of senior housing. Again, as I mentioned, the City Council, you already have the strategic plan in here. We are consistent with your city's goals and policies and the strategic measure, and the city staff is in strong support of the development. Requests for modifications, I don't know if it's necessary for me to go through all of my requests. I believe that with the unanimous support of city planning on there, the modifications, I'm sure you have that information in front of you. So again, what we are seeking approval of, the comprehensive plan amendment for the western parcel to extend the COM future land use designation that already exists on the eastern parcel. We are seeking approval of rezoning to the planned unit development, the business, professional, residential, the PUD BPR. We are also seeking approval of the preliminary development plan. Thank you, and any questions?
Very good. We'll hear from public comment first, and then we'll see if we have questions of you.
Okay,
thank you. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, I've got, I think, 3 or 4 people signed up. Sharon Baldwin.
Good evening, council members. My name is Sharon Baldwin. I am a senior retired person living in Arvada, and I am in support of the Legacy Senior Community Development Plan. I moved to Colorado 9 years ago from out of state to be near my 2 wonderful grandchildren. I bought a condo. If I were to move now, today, to purchase that condo I live in, it would be twice as much, and I would not be able to afford that. But you all know that, I'm sure. So I'm here to represent the many women, especially in Arvada, who are desperately seeking affordable housing. Most of these women I've met at community events, meetings like at the Stanley Lake Library and some of the other meetings. Most of these women are single, divorced, or widowed women who have not had an opportunity to get a good education or have a work history that paid a decent living. Not like me. I have had those opportunities, so I'm speaking for them. Many do not have any children or relatives in the area, but are longtime members of the community of Arvada. I wanted to give you an example of a woman I met a couple of months ago. Now, this is to tug at your heartstrings, and I'm hoping that it works. I met this woman at a community event. She was a 70-plus woman. She has lived in Arvada for a long time, rents an apartment in the old town area. She has severe arthritis. Now get this, she's 70-plus years, which is my age range. She gets a small Social Security check, and she works 2 part-time jobs, one of which is a cleaning job, which she will not be able to do for a long period of time because of her arthritis. Many months, she has to choose between food and medication. Should any senior have to choose between food and medication? I ask of you. I know there's a lot of wealthy people and a lot of wealthy seniors that live in Arvada, but if you look around, there are a lot of very low-income seniors who live in apartments that are just scraping by. I plead with you to consider this plan. Arvada needs affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Margaret Lundy?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Margaret Lundy. I live at 6241 Benton Street in Arvada. I am the property owner to the south of the proposed rezoning and development. My question is, some of the questions were already answered. By the way, I fit all of those categories except that I happen to be able to make some money. But, so I'm fortunate in that respect. But I don't have any family. I don't have any, I have this property, that's it. And it is owned by the bank. So my question is, on the preliminary plan, Bobby Joe was just talking about, and I'm sorry, I always forget your last name because everybody's so familiar here. I would prefer to say Ms. Buttle, but at any rate, because I'm not that relaxed. I have a question about West 63rd Avenue and being extended to, it's on the south end of the proposed development, and then the extension of Benton Street. Well, I'm concerned about it as the future Benton Street extension, which is drawn in on this preliminary plan, which happens to take looks like it takes a sizable chunk of my corner if this goes through. So I don't know what other time to address this question, but my property is impacted, will be impacted by some of this future development of Benton Street. So with this preliminary development plan, if it goes through, does that mean that is the way it's going to go through? There will not be any anticipated changes right now on Benton Street as it affects me and my property, and perhaps if the picture were up there, you could see it. It has to be a little bit bigger than that. And that is confusing because it's turned, north is not north on that picture. Now north is north. But I am the large acreage that is in the southwest corner, south and west, south, exactly, thank you. So there's been some talk about Benton Street being, no, that's Chase. Benton Street coming east. Benton Street, not that far east. There, that would be Benton Street. So as far as I understand it now, there are no plans to improve Benton Street. But in looking at this preliminary design, it's referring to a future right-of-way dedication. That's me.
Okay, we'll have, as soon as you're done with your testimony and we've concluded the other testimony, we'll certainly ask staff to direct.
Good, if you would,
to
thank you.
address that.
And you did add, because I was concerned about rezoning RL in this current one to the, but the RL part is only the small part. The rest of it is already business, correct? On the comprehensive plan.
Is that? That's correct.
Okay. And then, I guess just finally, the question is, if for some reason or another this does not go through, you're applying for the rezoning to the planned unit development, business, professional, residential. So that will stay if for some reason or other her development does not go on. That zoning, once you're approved tonight, the zoning will stay?
Is that true, Mr. Daly? Or from staff?
Yes, the zoning will stay in place. However, it will be associated with a particular preliminary development plan. If that preliminary development plan were to change, it would require new public hearings in front of the Planning Commission and City Council.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. I have a couple other people who did sign sheets indicating that they are supporting the issue but do not wish to speak, but do want to have their name read into the record. First is Mary K. Kane, who is in support, and then Elisa Hasselbrock are both in support. Are there any other members of the public that would like to testify? Okay, anything else from the applicant?
Council, Mr. Mayor. Steve Cerisa, Gene Engineering, 5690 Webster Street, Arvada, 80002. We'd just like an opportunity to answer Ms. Margaret's question about the proposal on Benton and 63rd. Our engineering and proposal does not impact her property. That would be future development if it ever happened. If she chose to do anything with her property that would differ from what she's currently doing, further subdivision, et cetera, that would be the staff's inclination to enforce that.
Okay. So as long as she's using the property as she is now, we're not going to be
That's correct.
doing any taking or anything of that nature?
No, sir.
Okay. Is that consistent with staff's understanding? Very good. Okay. So, nope, we're not taking your property right now. And, well,
Because the way that's drawn, the way it's drawn, as opposed to moving the right-of-way to the east, which is vacant, or slightly to the north, which is vacant, their property, it's coming into my property. If it were based on this preliminary drawing of a right-of-way, it would have to come into my property.
at which point you would be developing that property, and so there would be development requirements on you, yes, at that point.
Only if I develop.
Right. Or sell it, yeah. And somebody else then down the road wanted to develop it.
But it has to be that way. In other words, that corner is gone.
Mr. Williams,
Right, please.
we have no intention of pushing Benton through there. The only time it would happen is if this property came in for redevelopment. And so whether
if Ms. Lundy's property
Ms. Lundy
came in.
spoke or developed it, or she sold it and it was developed, that's the only time we look to complete Benton Street.
Okay, so, ball's in your court. Okay, I've closed the public comment portion. We've had presentation and some explanation from the applicant. I'm opening it up for city council questions or action. Mr. McGough, you're first.
Mayor, members of council.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we're clear. When council's ready to make the motions, I would do it in the exact order in which you called these matters up. I do the rezoning first, and then I would do the resolution from the Planning Commission, and then finally the PDP.
Got it. Okay, Mr. McGough.
Yes, I have a couple of questions of the applicant. First of all, just a comment, in your talking about the desirability of this location, you didn't mention Homestead Park, which is very close and I think a very protected walk of a couple of blocks to get to the park. So it's just another amenity that you did not mention, but I think it's very favorable. The question I had is you didn't make reference to the two residences that are on the north that are up on that come on Sheridan, 5330 and 5340. Can you tell us again what will be happening with those residences?
Absolutely. On the western portion of the property that we are doing a lot consolidation of, there is a single-family home of which we will demolish. However, I'm not buying the property that's closer to 64th Street. That will remain with the current owner and will remain as is.
Okay, so the one house that's further to the south will be demolished?
Yes, it will
Okay.
be. Yes, it will be.
That's the only question I have. Oh, no, I do have one other question. So the access will be up what we think, well, it's Benton Street, so it'll be coming in from the south, and from the north, what is the access?
Well, until the property to the north, that front 64th Street is developed, there will be no access off of 64th Street.
Okay.
Generally, what we're anticipating is the lion's share of the access will come off of 63rd, West
Okay,
63rd.
to be constructed. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Marriott?
Thank you. I've got a question, Ms. Lucas. You said these are going to be, it's for low-income seniors. What's the source of the funding or the subsidy that makes it available to that?
Sure. What we've done is we've submitted an application to the Colorado Housing Finance Authority for Section 42, the low-income housing tax credits.
Okay.
So in addition to the low-income housing tax credits, there will be a perm mortgage, and then we will also be making an application for home funds through the state.
Okay, so a variety of things. But are those types of funding mechanisms, how long, does that become in perpetuity, or is there a time frame by which it has to stay that way, or is there any time it could be converted?
Sure. The properties, once you receive the tax credits, there is a initial 15-year compliance period, and then we also sign an extended use agreement that will make this property have to remain affordable for a minimum of 50 years. And that is codified by the filing of the land use restriction agreement that is immediately filed after the warranty deed.
Okay. Sounds good. One last question I have for you. I know in our senior housing development regulations that the parking requirement's really quite low. It's a half a spot per unit, or one spot per 2 units. It sounds like you have developed these things before. Is that adequate in your experience?
The half a spot is, in our experience with where we've developed, no. Generally, we have more and more our seniors are active. Everyone's busy. They're out doing, they have life. Some of them are still working. They're doing sporting events where, what we're finding more and more is we're having to provide more bike racks than anything. So the storage units or the garages, more often than not, are used as storage units.
Mm-hmm.
But what we find is at least a minimum of 1 car per unit is, that's the least that we will do. But then you also have to take into consideration, you have visitors that are coming in. You do have some people that have maybe a visiting nurse that may show up on a daily basis. So we find ourselves, we try and do at least a minimum of 1.5 per unit.
Right.
If the property allows it, we do that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And how many do you have here? What's the?
In Colorado?
No, I'm sorry. How many parking spaces
I think it's 68,
and how many units?
72 units, but we also have 24 garages.
Oh, plus 24 garages.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I'm a little troubled, frankly, by your presentation from the perspective that I will be a senior in 7 weeks.
But we just got done saying, ow. We just got done saying, everyone's active. 10, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, when we saw our grandparents and our parents at age 60, they were old and,
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah.
Thanks, you're not helping.
No, I'm saying we're not old. I'm not too far from there either, so.
Okay, I don't have any other questions up here. I'm ready to entertain a motion. Mr. McGough, as this is your district.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am ready to make a motion. I believe that our attorney has told us that the order is to first deal with the rezoning. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay. Let's see. I move that Council Bill 18-031, an ordinance rezoning certain land within the City of Arvada, Legacy Senior Residences from City of Arvada RL, Residential Low Density, and B2, General Business, to PUD BPR, Planned Unit Development, Business Professional Residential, and amending the official zoning maps of the City of Arvada, Colorado, generally located southwest of 64th Avenue and Sheridan Boulevard, and comprised of 5430 West 64th Avenue and a vacant parcel, be approved on final reading, numbered 4649, and ordered published by title only. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Motions to approve the rezoning. All votes are cast. That passes 7-0.
Okay, and then to deal with the Planning Commission, I move that CP 2018-0001, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado, to amend the 2014 Arvada Comprehensive Plan land use designation pertaining to legacy senior residences from suburban residential to neighborhood commercial, generally located southwest of West 64th Avenue and Sheridan Boulevard and comprised of 5440 and 5430 West 64th Avenue, be ratified and approved. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Motions to ratify and approve the resolution of the Planning Commission. All votes are passed. That passes 7-0.
And I did have here. Okay, and I move that Legacy Senior Residences Preliminary Development Plan, generally located southwest of West 64th Avenue and Sheridan Boulevard, comprised of 5430 West 64th Avenue and a vacant parcel, be approved, subject to the attached updated conditions of approval. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Motions to approve the preliminary development plan. All votes are cast. That passes 7-0. Congratulations. This is something that's been very important to the City Council. We know that we have, as Exhibit A, aging people who are in our community, and so we want, and folks want to stay in Arvada, and I think you presented that during your presentation. I think it's a great location for this type of facility. I like Mr. McGough's comments about the park being close by as well. I think it's just, it's an important thing to have. I know that, as I understand it from Ms. Miller, Habitat for Humanity was looking at this property. Certainly, I think a greater number of people are being able to benefit by having the senior housing than what we could have done through Habitat for Humanity. I want to thank city staff for really recognizing an opportunity to meet one of our objectives. So thank you to staff for really seeing this as an opportunity and helping advance it. One more public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing on Council Bill 18032, an ordinance approving the First Amendment to the City of Arvada Police Money Purchase Retirement Plan regarding contributions. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this action before you tonight culminates approximately year-long, actually over a year-long discussion that we have had with your support and endorsement to address the retirement contribution for our sworn police employees. This is something that came out of discussions that occurred over an approximate 3 to 4 year period regarding the sworn police officers' retirement plan. There had been some discussion about possibly entering into a defined benefit pension program. When that decision was made not to do that, the council directed staff to work with our police officers on increasing the police money purchase retirement plan from the former or the current contribution of 10% employee and employer to 12% employee and employer. This proposal was discussed with our sworn police employees over a approximately 2-week period where we met and discussed in small groups with our sworn police employees to discuss the ramifications of this plan. It was eventually endorsed by the members by a vote of 144 in favor and 3 against. And tonight, the action before you would approve an ordinance that would provide the First Amendment to this plan to allow the contributions to be increased for the employee and the employer by 2% to a total of 12% each. And staff is very enthusiastically recommending approval of this ordinance.
Very good. Is there any member of the public that would like to address City Council on this? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion, open it up for council question or action. Ms. Ford, you're first.
I'd like to make a motion if there are no questions.
Mr. Jones, did you have a question? Nope. You may proceed, Ms. Ford.
I move that CB 18-032, an ordinance approving the First Amendment, the City of Arvada Police Money Purchase Retirement Plan regarding contributions, be approved on final reading, numbered 4650, and ordered published by title only.
Motions for approval, Mr. Pfeiffer.
I just want to make a comment. I want to thank leadership and staff and the police officers getting together and solving this. This was something that I think council was concerned with. And, you know, sometimes we don't realize, but unfortunately a police officer can't work till they're 70 or 80 years old. They go through a lot of tough physical work that their body just does not survive as long. So to help them retire at a golden age, I don't know, how old are you? I'm just sorry, I'm just kidding. He's wearing the right colors, but you know, the thing is they can't ripe as well as the mayor, I guess. And so, but this is important, and I'm glad that we finally got there. I think there's still more work we need to do for our officers. They put their lives on the line every day, and this is one step in the right direction to continue advancing them, and encouraging retention as well is also nice. So thank you to all those in blue.
Very good. That passes 7-0. Do we have any member of the public that would like to address City Council at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports from City Council. Do we have any council reports? Ms. Ford.
I'd like to just mention that the Arvada Sustainability Advisory Committee had an opportunity recently to tour 2 glass recycling facilities. One of them is Rocky Mountain Bottling Company that makes bottles for Coors, and they are actually desperately in need of more glass. It's a wonderful, something that I never knew before was that both aluminum and glass can be recycled continually, forever and ever. And there definitely is a market for it here in this area of the country. And one of the things that they mentioned is that if they are able to get more glass for recycling, that will help them in terms of their cost, because it's very expensive to ship this material across the country, and it's also cheaper. Recycled glass is also cheaper than the resource getting, new glass. So it's a really wonderful way of taking a used resource and doing something good with it.
Great. Thank you for doing that. It was unfortunate to see that fire at the recycling plant over there in Adams County. Any other comments from council? Mr. Devon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just want to remind you that next Monday we will have a workshop We will have on the agenda the strategy to address sidewalk and trail gaps, and then we will have, at your direction from last Monday's workshop, additional discussion regarding West 72nd Avenue. This would be the segment from Oak to Sims, which council asked us to investigate options to create the debt service payment for the additional approximately $11.3 million, and we'll have that information available to present to you and discuss with you next Monday.
Great. And Mr. Marriott will be leading that discussion as I will be out of town, but I'll try to watch on the internet. So. Mr. Daly, anything from you? We stand adjourned.